I'm going to walk through how to do exercise 8.1, prompt numbers. Okay, so the purpose of this exercise is to practice filling in an array and then to traverse that array forwards and backwards so that you can print the values in forwards order and then in backwards order. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I have downloaded the zip file and I opened that up. I opened up the BlueJ project and now I'm just opening up the class. And the first thing you want to do is make sure that you are reading the comments. The author, you're going to go ahead and fill that out with your information. So for the version, I'm just going to put today's date, which it is now the 17th. Okay, and the details have already been filled out for you. This program prompts the user to use several numbers, so we're going to be using a scanner to be monitoring user input. And then we're going to store that input into an array so that we can print those numbers in forwards and backwards order. So this is kind of an example. So first you're going to prompt the user, how many numbers will you enter? Say the user says 4. So at this point we want to create an array that has 4 different spots to store numbers, and it's also going to prompt the user to for a number that many times. So you see that the user gets prompted for a number 4 different times and they enter in 4 different numbers. Those numbers get stored into an array so that you can print them out in forwards order, so 12, 8, -2, and 39. And then also in backwards order, so 39, -2, 8, and 12. So these are just example numbers. You can try out any different list of numbers. Okay, so let's start off with the first part of this. So I've kind of sectioned this off with comments that tell you what to do. So the first thing we see is that the scanner is created, a new scanner called console, and we could have named it anything. We could have called it X. Console is not a Java keyword, it's just a variable name. So I named it console, and it creates a new scanner that monitors system input, so anything that the user can type in. In order to prompt the user, we do a print statement. How many numbers will you enter? And so it's expecting now a integer to represent the number of numbers that the person is going to enter. We want to store that to a variable called count so that we can later use that to create an array of that length. Okay. Now the first thing we have to do is we have to check to see if scanner has actually been imported, because scanner is not part of the standard Java library. So I don't see any import statements, so that's the first thing I have to do. And usually we do that before any comments. So I'm going to go ahead and put import, and I'm going to import from the java.util package. I could just put star to import everything, but I really am just interested in the scanner class. So I'm going to put .scanner, and then don't forget your semicolon. So I've done that already. I'm going to go ahead and compile. We've got problems because there's question marks here where we need values. We're going to worry about that in a little bit. Okay, so at this point we have gotten a number from the user that represents the number of values that they're going to give us. So we want to make sure that we're going to create the array so that it's big enough to hold all those numbers. So we're going to go ahead and we're expecting numbers. Let's expect whole numbers. So we're going to create an array of integers. Okay, so array of integers, and we can call it anything we like. I'm just going to go ahead and call it numbers. And that's going to get a new array, a new integer array that is big enough to hold the number that the user puts in. So that's count. So in between these 2 square brackets, I'm going to put count. Before we saw we just put a number in there, but now we're going to put the variable that represents the number the user gives us, because that could change on any given run of this program. And then don't forget your semicolon. Okay, so now we've initialized an array that is count long. It has count number storage slots, but right now it's all stored, it only has zeros in it. It has the default value of integers, which are zeros. We want to now travel through that array and replace those zeros with the user supplied numbers. So if we remember that arrays index values start at 0, we know that we want to represent the index values with I here. So we want to start our for loop at 0, the beginning of the array. And we also know that an array's index value ends at its length minus 1. Okay, because we start at 0, the ending element is going to be the length minus 1. So we're going to wind up going to, we can actually say two things here. We can say numbers.length to access its length, or we can simply use count. Okay, so I could say we're going to go from I equals 0 to I is less than count, or we could do from I is less than minus 1. Either one works. But I'm going to make it simpler. We're going to go up to but not include the value count. Okay, so now we have to actually make our program do something. We're iterating through this loop the number of times that the array is long, but we want to do something during those iterations. Right now we're just prompting the user that many times. We want to be able to store whatever value they give us into our array. Well, how do we access each element of an array? To assign a value to a spot in an array, we say the name of the array and then put the index value between the square brackets, and then set it a value. So on the right hand side of this equal sign, we give it whatever value. Okay, so that's the basic format. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we want to follow that basic format. So the name of our array is numbers. So we're going to say numbers sub, and our index value here is represented by I. So sub I gets the value of whatever the user is going to supply us with. So we're not going to just put in a number. We're going to get the next integer that's entered into the print stream. So the print stream that we've created a scanner for that print stream called console. So we're actually going to just use this, console.nextInt. Okay, so that'll get the next integer that the user supplies us with. And so this will iterate through, constantly monitoring. As long as this for loop is iterating through, it'll constantly take the integers that the user is providing after the prompt and putting it into that spot in the array. Okay, so let's say that the user specifies they will enter 4 numbers. So that's going to create an array that has 4 spots like this. It's all going to be filled with zeros at first. But then as this goes through, it's going to replace those zeros with whatever that value of console.nextInt is. So it's going to replace all those values. So let's say that the user supplies 1, followed by a 2, followed by a 3, followed by a 4, then that's what the array will look like at the end of this. All right, so we don't just want to store those values. Now we want to print out those values in forward order. So we can actually use a for loop that's much like this first one, because we want to start at the 0th element of the array, the very beginning of the array, and we want to go up to, but not including its length. So count. All right, so now instead of modifying the value that's at each position of the array, we want to access these values and print them out. So we need a print statement. And since we're just printing out those values, we can reference numbers sub I. We're going to print out each of those values at each of the array's index numbers. So let's take this example array. Let's pretend that this is the array that we have. When I is 0, it's going to print out the 0th element, which has the value of 1. So it'll print out 1, and then I is going to increase to 2. 2 is still less than this length, which is 4. So it's going to print out 2 on a separate line because it's a print lin. And then I is going to increase again by 1. So now we're going to be on the second element, so 0, 1, 2, the second position. We're going to now compare that to the length, so 2 is still less than 4. So now we're going to print that out. Again, I increases by 1 again, so now we are at 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3. This is the third position. And now we're going to print out the value there, which is 4. Well, first we check to see is 3 less than 4? Yes, it is. So we're going to print out the value there, which is 4. Now we're going to go back up again. I++, so I is now 4. 4 is not less than the length, which is good because we don't have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We would have an out of bounds error if we tried to access that element because it doesn't exist. So then we exit out of the for loop and our output looks like this, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's exactly what we want. We want to print it in forwards order from left to right. Now we want to do that again. We want to do another for loop, but instead of starting at 0 and going to up to, but not including the length of the array, we're going to go the opposite direction. So now we want to start at I equals the count, but remember that the count is representative of the length of this particular array, and that the last element of an array, the last index value of an array is length minus 1. It's length minus 1. So we're going to start at count minus 1. And then we're going to want to go backwards to 0. So we want to make sure that I is going to be greater than or equal to 0 because we want to include that 0th element this time. And instead of adding to I, since we want to go backwards, we need to be decrementing or decreasing the value of I. So instead of I++, we put I minus minus, which is shorthand for decrease I by 1. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and create our for loop around this. Each time our for loop iterates, well, let's actually put this outside of the for loop. We don't want to print that many times. We want to print that once. Each time we execute this for loop, we want to be printing a value of the array. So again, we're just going to print out, the value of whatever I is. So the value stored at index I. So let's go ahead and put that here. So now using that same array, we're going to be going backwards. So count minus 1 is going to be 4 minus 1, so 0, 1, 2, 3. So the third position. So it's going to print out 4. It's going to print out the value 4, which is at the third position. Then we're going to go up. We're going to do I minus minus. So now I was 3. It becomes 2. So 0, 1, 2. It finds the value at the position, the index value 2, and prints out that value. Goes back up. I was 2. Now it's 1. 1 is still greater than or equal to 0. So we go to the first position, 0, 1. Find that value and print that out. Go up again, and now we were at 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. 0 is still less than or equal to 0. So we go to the 0th element right here, and we print out this value. Oops, there we go. And so now it should print in backwards order, so going from right to left. So let's try that out. Let's go ahead and compile this. No syntax errors. Wonderful. So we're going to go ahead and run main. We're not going to supply any values. Press enter. I'm going to go ahead and use the test values that were in the comments. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm going to enter 4 values: 12, 8, minus 2, and 39. So now we should see that forwards order should be in the left to right order, so 12, 8, negative 2, and 39, and then in backwards order, 39, negative 2, 8, and 12. And that's how you do it.